Susan, what about Amanda Knox? She was someone you interviewed shortly after she came back to the United States. What is your thinking about the decision of the Italian appeals court to reinstate the guilty charges against her?
I went out to Seattle last spring and actually had the first sit-down, face-to-face interview Amanda Knox ever did with a reporter. This was in advance of her book that she wrote, and she talked about this very procedure with the appeals court in Italy and what it would mean to her. She was at that point hopeful that this court would confirm the fact that her conviction had been overturned. That did not happen. It did the opposite yesterday. It reaffirmed her conviction on these charges. It's not. This process isn't done yet, but Amanda Knox says that she's going to appeal this decision by the court, which she can do. But if the High Court once again upholds her conviction, there could be a situation where Italy seeks her extradition from the United States. There is an extradition treaty. And that will then if that happens, the United States will have to decide if they're willing to extradite her to go back to serve a prison term that's now about 28 years.
What was your impression of her?
She's very young. She's only 26 even now. She was not very worldly at the time she went to be an exchange student in Italy. And while it's not for me to say whether she's guilty of this crime or not, I think it is fair to say that in a U.S. court, with the evidence against her, she would not have been convicted because of serious questions about the handling of evidence by the Italian authorities.
What do you think the public here in Washington, around the country, thinks about Amanda Knox?
I think it's certainly interesting to compare what Americans think about it and what Europeans think about it. I mean, I get the impression most Americans think she's probably not guilty, whereas people in Italy and Britain, as we were talking about before the show, think she is. And it would certainly raise some very interesting political and legal questions for Secretary Kerry if he had to make a decision on whether to ship her back to Italy.
Todd?
Well, I think that's totally true what Jeff says, but the point Susan made about the procedural issues in her trial and prosecution, they're significant enough given under American standards of law that probably the Secretary Kerry would have a lot of reason to say this was not on the level and she doesn't have to go back.